Buenos dias, Iglesia de Todos los Santos. Good morning, All Saints Church. My name is Thomas Diaz. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm on staff here at All Saints Church. And welcome to our special Pride Sunday here in our beloved community. As you may see, our church is festive with the colors of the rainbow as we dedicate this Sunday to Pride Sunday. Before we go into the form, I have a few housekeeping items to mention. Following the form, we ask you to join us for our 11:15 service dedicated to Pride Sunday with guest preacher Reverend Carla Robinson, followed by coffee hour with the Reverend Susan Russell, which I'm going to add in right now, that on this past week, Susan had a birthday. So congratulations and happy birthday to Susan. And thank you for all that you've done for our ministry and for us, the LGBTQ folks in the Episcopal Church. As we continue to go through this pandemic, All Saints has been supportive local organizations, as we call Partners in Love. And this morning, our Partners in Love is the San Gabriel Valley LGBTQ Center. The San Gabriel Valley LGBTQ Center is a California nonprofit founded in 2011. Their mission is to promote a safe and inclusive San Gabriel Valley for the people of all orientations and gender identities. They aim to enrich the lives of LGBTQ plus San Gabriel Valley residents. Please visit their website at sgvlgbtq.org to make a donation today. So thank you for that. So welcome to what we're calling the Pride Forum, the Rector's Forum, and we are titling it Living Fully, Authentically. What does that mean for the LGBTQ community? And joining us this morning is folks from our LGBTQ ministry here at All Saints Church, and I'm going to pass it on to Hannah, who is the ministry leader of the LGBTQ ministry, to introduce our group with us this morning.
Hello and good morning, All Saints Church. My name is Hannah. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm leader of the LGBTQ ministry here at All Saints Church. So, as Thomas mentioned, our panel today is made up of a group of LGBTQ people from the community at All Saints Church, of a variety of ages, backgrounds, and experiences. So, I guess to kick us off, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves, just tell us who you are, how long you've been in the orbit of All Saints Church, and if you're comfortable answering, how you identify.
Good morning, I'm Ella Baker. I have been at All Saints Church for 7 years now, and I am a queer transgender woman.
Good morning, my name is Terry Moore. I've been at All Saints since 1982. That makes 39 years in July. I am a gay man. My pronouns are he, him, and his.
Hi, my name is Kaia Duke. I am a cis lesbian. I've been at All Saints for about a year and a half, and my pronouns are she, her.
Hi, I'm Gabriel. I have been at All Saints, I guess, about 5 years now. I started in the youth program. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as gay or queer. I guess I'm the youth ambassador for the LGBTQ ministry.
Morning, everyone. My name is Darryl Young. I use he, him pronouns. I am a gay male, cis male, Asian American immigrant to the United States. And I have been a lurker at All Saints for a long time, but only recently joined the Getting Connected class, led by Thomas and others.
Awesome. And I don't think I identify myself, and I identify as a gay, queer, cis male. All right. So on to the first question that we have with our forum. So the title being Living Freely, Fully, and Authentically. The question I ask you to this group is, what does that mean to you when you hear that title, to live fully and authentically? And we can also put it through an angle as a person of faith. What does that line mean to you when you say living fully and authentically? As a person of faith, what does that mean to you? And who would like to take a jab at that first? No pressure. Terry, do you want to go since you have the mic?
Did you ask me?
Yeah.
I don't want to go first, but I will.
Okay.
Well, if it means that I have come close to doing that now as a 75-year-old, it has taken quite a while for me to get here. For more than half of my life, I lived in hiding and fear of being discovered. There are two truths that have been with me since I was very young. One, that I knew God loved me and was somehow calling me to a life that included worshiping in church and singing in choir. And two, that I'm queer. I think of John's gospel where he had Jesus say, "You did not choose me, but I chose you." That's how it felt many times through the years, and there were many times I begged God to leave me alone in both areas. For more than 40 years, I was able to keep my homosexuality a secret from most people. At the age of 19 in 1964, my best friend could tell that I was terribly unhappy and begged me to confide in her. I told her I was thinking of suicide because I thought I was homosexual. She encouraged me to seek help, and so I came out to my parents a week later and asked them to help me find a therapist who could fix me. They found a community therapist who explained that homosexuality was a symptom of family dysfunction. That initial work and 20 more years of therapy did not change anything in my sexual orientation. After graduation, my best friend and I got married, figuring that heterosexual sex would make a difference and change my impulses. It didn't. The short version of the story is that we had a family, and I became the epitome of a model citizen, a loving husband and father, a respected teacher and member of the community, and an active, devoted church member and chorister here at All Saints. I signed up for Education for Ministry, a program which required its members each year to write and share a spiritual autobiography with the group. And each year I was able to share more honestly about who I was. Still, for over 20 years, I managed to keep most people from knowing that I was secretly having compulsive, furtive, and anonymous sex with men in parks and public restrooms. That is, until I got caught and arrested. When the arrest report was sent to my school district, I was told I could no longer be a teacher in public schools until I could settle the matter in court. And so I was outed to my children and colleagues at work. After the arrest and a year of working in a 12-step program for Sexual Compulsives Anonymous, I was ready to break the cycle of secrets and dishonesty. But as for living as a gay man fully and authentically, that didn't happen right away. My wife, Carol, said it was time for me to start living in tune with my biology, and we divorced. We'd been through a lot together, and she had been incredibly loyal and had shared and kept my secrets. And it was time for her to start taking care of herself. Getting that divorce was the hardest thing I'd ever done. We shared our story with George Regas, and he agreed to conduct a blessing of our divorce for our family in the chapel, where we prayed for forgiveness for breaking our vows and for the grace to continue our family love in new ways. My two sons, who grew up here at All Saints and who knew gay people here, were surprised when I came out to them, but not hurt or alarmed. It was harder for my daughter, who was only 13 then. For her, I was a liar. The same was true for our closest friends, who couldn't believe why I hadn't confided in them. For the most part, people were more angry with me for divorcing Carol than for my being gay. I met my spouse, Harry Prince, the following year when he joined Coventry Choir and was assigned the seat directly in front of me. So could I then, finally at the age of 45, begin to live fully and authentically as a gay man, proud of being who I am? Not yet. The hardest part of living freely and authentically was with my high school students. One ninth grade boy announced in class soon after I met Harry, "I hear you're living with a man now." And I said vehemently, and before I could think, "I am not." In another advanced placement class, while discussing crime and punishment, in response to reading that Raskolnikov, the main character, had murdered an old woman with an axe, a girl in class exclaimed, "That is so gay." "What?" I said. "Do you think all gay people are axe murderers?" "What are you talking about?" she said. It took a while for me to figure out that she meant gay as a general pejorative, meaning stupid or weird. I don't feel much better about that realization. I still find that coming out to new people is uncomfortable. If I mention something about my children or grandchildren at a church meeting or when I'm talking to a group of teachers, people will ask me about my family, and I think to myself, is it necessary that I tell them that I'm married to a man now? So here I am now. Is this authentic? I have no straight men close friends. My closest friends are gay. Besides Harry, there are two men in particular with whom I talk to every week, at least every week, about everything and anything about my life of faith. Frankly, they're more puzzled about my involvement here at church than they are about my gay life. One is a man that I met while I was in that 12-step program. Another one is my best friend that I met in my senior year at high school. He and I talk about how different life was then that it would be for a high school senior nowadays. We wonder if we had the experience of living now, would we have shared our feelings of love for each other, which we very much couldn't do then. He is married now and lives across the country and is happy. And we both hope that in our own way, we're being honest and true and as authentic as we can be.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry, for that. Thank you.
So for me, living fully authentic and free means not dimming my light and not hiding who I am, to use a gospel term, under a bushel, which is what I had done for 30 years before coming out 3 years ago. It means not sacrificing the fullness of who I am for the comforts of being perceived as cisgender and straight. It means not taking the more easy route of living stealth as a quote-unquote passable trans woman, even though that comes with a greater degree of harassment. It means being able to be fully queer, fully transgender, and fully a woman of faith, even though my faith community and trans and queer communities are often seen to be at odds with each other and mutually alienating. So to be at a place like All Saints, where all of who I am is seen and blessed and celebrated, has been incredibly life-changing for me, and it's a source of life that I hope more people can access.
Thank you.
So this week I was listening to a podcast, Unlocking Us by Brene Brown. It's excellent, you should listen. And she was talking about armored leadership, among other things, and was talking about this juxtaposition of either fitting in culture and belonging culture, and was just seemed very on topic for the fact we're having this forum this week. And so she describes fitting in culture as adapting yourself so that you are presenting whatever needs to be presented in a particular environment scenario. And a belonging culture as one where you are able to not adapt, but integrate. And you're able to bring your whole self, and you are able to always share every part of yourself. And she said the other thing about a belonging culture is that a belonging culture can be very difficult if we don't have a full, depending like on our level of self-love. So it's not just this outward exterior space that we are in, but it's also this interior space. And thinking about my relationship to the church, I'm a cradle Episcopalian, went to the 8 a.m. service every Sunday for as long as I can remember. And I have always had to, or there's a certain perception that I would have to put on at church, not necessarily because I felt I was gay and needed to hide that, but just because I was always the acolyte. I never got in trouble, and at some point I didn't think I could break that image. Later, the first person that I actually had a conversation about possibly being gay was my priest at the time. And I was very surprised that he was supportive, because my experience in the South was that you couldn't be gay and also be Christian. So that was a pleasant surprise, but it's taken a long time to think that I could to actually believe that I can be gay and have that expressed safely in a church space. And I came to All Saints a year and a half ago on Homecoming Sunday. And this was a very different space where I felt like the exterior space I was in and the interior space of myself were able to kind of meld. And I could cry and see people wearing pronoun tags and obviously see obviously gay couples here, and I think that that could be me and that can be me. And so bringing that self-love and being able to share that with the folks around us seems to be fully and authentically a way to be.
I think one of the ways that as a youth I have kind of been lucky in being able to experience my faith differently, or not differently, but in a way at All Saints, where I was part of the Seekers program, and it was a really cool experience to be able to learn about my religion and my spirituality and not be expected to have to say, this is what I agree with, or this is the full breadth of what I believe at the end of it. And I did end up getting confirmed, but there were people in my Seekers class who didn't, and no one shamed them or treated them any differently. And I think it's an experience for all people, but I think in a very specific sense, queer people, to be able to, or to almost have to have doubt go into their experience of faith, because I don't think that it's really possible to see all the ways that queer people aren't accepted by churches that aren't the Episcopal Church, but there's no way to see all of the hatred in media and not think, is this really not something that I can experience and partake in a full way? And so one of the things that kind of has helped me be able to live fully and in my queerness and my faith is being able to have people support me in my doubt, because at this point in my life, I don't really know what my beliefs are. I think I'm spiritual, but I don't know if I'm Christian. And so I think one of the things that can be very openly and fully queer and religious at the same time is being able to know that having doubt doesn't make you any less Christian or spiritual. And I think that's been it's helped me not think that I've had to choose, or like you were talking about, like fitting in, that in the Episcopal Church I've kind of been able to feel accepted in all ways. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm already so wowed by all of the other panelists, very thoughtful and personal things that you've shared. Thank you. I guess in my view, living a fully authentic life as a person of faith involves continual renewing and deepening of one's understanding of what God's love really looks like and feels like. And of course, we all as human beings have different impediments to getting there, different things that we've experienced in our lives, maybe as trauma, or things that we've learned and then we have to unlearn, our own choices that we've made. And I guess that's a general statement for everyone, but maybe for LGBTQ plus individuals, we just have a certain set of those things that we have to unlearn and recover from the traumas that we've experienced as a result of our family, our friends, our faith communities, the society has brought upon us. Maybe just as an example of one of those things to unlearn and relearn, I was dwelling this week about the Holy Spirit. And in my upbringing as a young person, I was brought up in a Pentecostal charismatic tradition. And I read in the Bible that the Holy Spirit is a comforter, but I think I've been really realizing how that wasn't true for me personally, because my experience of the Holy Spirit was as a person who would out me, because in a kind of a typical charismatic service, the preacher, mostly a male person, would stand up there and say things like, the Holy Spirit is telling me that there's somebody out there who needs to, give up their gambling addiction, and you need to come up to the altar right now and repent. And I would always be afraid that the next person to be outed would be me, that, oh my gosh, there's this person, you've been wondering about your sexual orientation, you need to come up to the front right now. And so for me, that was always a terrifying experience of the Holy Spirit, and not one at all of comfort. And so that's something that I've had to unlearn in order to more fully be an authentic person of faith.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, just thank you so much for sharing these stories, everyone. So coming then back around to the Episcopal Church, the church has made great strides in the past towards LGBTQ inclusion, and All Saints has been a part of that journey. But the struggle for full inclusion is still not over. So what do you think the struggle still is in the church, and what work does the church still need to be doing to reach a place where we can be fully secure in our authentic selves?
When I was thinking about this question, Kaia, the fact that you brought up like the fitting in idea was kind of what I was thinking about here, where one of the things that I have experienced is in youth group and in church, I always do feel supported and loved, and at the same time, there still exists the idea of a sort of less power in a sense. Not that I want power over my youth group, but more so that it feels, as with many minority groups, that you are kind of like, even Pride, as much as it's always so exciting and freeing to be part of Pride, there's still an aspect of like, this is the month where we're celebrated, and then all the other months, it feels more like, I don't want to say like tolerance, but I don't know if tolerance is a word. It's not that we're tolerated, but it's more that we are I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just selfish and want to be celebrated all the time. But it feels a little bit like there are times where we are other, even within the church, because of how much we hear that we're not even accepted in the church. And so part of my sometimes that I talk about my queerness in the church or experience it, it feels a little bit separated or like an afterthought. And I guess I don't really have a solution for how to create a more integrated way of experiencing sexuality and gender identity, but I feel kind of in the way that the Episcopal Church kind of moves with, or even sometimes, luckily, a little bit faster than society at large in terms of acceptance, but it still sometimes feels like a lack of fullness, if that makes sense.
I'd like to piggyback on that. I think the Episcopal Church and All Saints in particular has done a really wonderful job of spearheading inclusion. But inclusion is not necessarily full belonging. It's just a first step to belonging. And we know that all the research shows that belonging is actually the fundamental root of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Before we can actualize, before we can engage and be integrated in a community, we have to know that we fundamentally belong. And I think to fully belong, we would need to not necessarily be put into these queer and trans boxes where, yes, Pride Sunday is amazing, but it's one day out of the year. Yes, our Trans Day of Remembrance service is absolutely impactful and necessary and amazing, but it's one day out of the year. And we are trans and we are queer 365 days out of the year. It means having queer and trans voices in the pulpit beyond topics that are necessarily exclusively queer and trans, because queer and trans people have so much to offer, especially to communities of faith, because I think more so than cisgender and straight people, we are forced to wrestle with our identities and who we are and what that means to actualize and engage this world in a loving, kind, compassionate way, and how we build the kingdom out of that struggle. And I think that that's something that would be a blessing to everybody, regardless of their gender identity, expression, or orientation.
I guess the one thing that I would say is that inclusion is very uneven in the Episcopal Church. If Harry and I were to move to his hometown of Boiling Springs, South Carolina, we would not live the same way there that we do here. They have an Episcopal church there that is very conservative. His family is Southern Baptist. We probably could not show up as a gay couple at that church. That being said, here at All Saints, I think I'm accepted fully here. I'm involved in so many different areas of ministry. Nobody ever questions the fact that I'm gay. My label does not come with me wherever I go. But since I've been involved in the LGBTQ plus sharing group on Monday night, I've met a lot of especially young people who have found All Saints by Googling inclusive churches. And so they come here because they've been mistreated at their churches where they used to go. And some of them, I think, come glad to be welcomed here, but wanting to hold on to the theology they had at those other churches. And they're very surprised when they come here and they're not being told what to believe. And they want to be told what to believe, and they don't like being told that you should ask questions. And so I think we need education for those people. And I think for the church, we need a lot of education about sexuality.
I think one area that the church needs to grow, and also the LGBTQ plus community in general needs to grow, is in taking a more intersectional view about identities. And I guess what I personally mean by that is that race matters, social class matters, your immigration status matters. All of those things create the lived experience that we all have as individuals. And I guess by intersectionality, I don't just mean, how you're so unique, you're a snowflake, I'm a snowflake, everyone's so different, but it's that the different forms of discrimination, racism, sexism, classism, ableism, all of the isms, they overlap in a way that sometimes is more than the sum of their parts. And so we have to really listen to, for example, our black trans women, because they experience things that are different than just black women and trans individuals. Their specific experiences are things that we need to listen to. So that's something I feel like we could all do a bit better at.
I think at this point I can only agree with everything that has been said, and that yes, education is absolutely, there needs to be space for conversations. I think that the Rector's Forum is something new to me, so I'm familiar with the concept of kids have Sunday school on Sunday mornings, and then the adults would have adult Sunday school, at least the churches I'd been at. And then you come here and there's Rector's Forum, which people get to share their experiences or speak on a topic, and then there's a Q&A after. And it's like this, you finish college or high school or master's or whatever, and then you go in the real world, and like, when do we still get to learn and have a chance to engage with academia or that kind of dialogue? And if you don't maybe have that in your social group just naturally, it doesn't happen. Or at least that's something that I've noticed for myself. And so I think that spaces like this, where it is built in as a regular part of a church's community, or as a regular part of the community where people can share their experiences, where we're all coming from, where we have space for them to share, and then people to ask questions and to ask them safely, and know that these questions are asked in true curiosity, so that they can learn and understand better.
Well, I want to start by saying first that thank you all for standing in your truth with us in this, because I think one of the things that we do recognize, and we just mentioned it, is out of the 365 days of the year, this is usually the one day where we hasten to put as much decorations as we can, and let's also educate people on the same day, right? So there's a combination. We can't even fully celebrate, because now we have to express our hurts and pains and the healing that we continue, transform through our healings that are being done in our lives. So in saying that, we've talked about the struggle, and it's important to do so. But I'm also curious about what has surprised you up to this point about being part of a parish or the Episcopal Church, what you've seen up to this point about the progress towards inclusion. And what does that mean? And I think we and Ellie kind of talked about that, are we coming to a point where the surprising note is that we've made great strides, and is it shifting to something else that needs to happen? Beyond full inclusion. But what has surprised you up to this point in your experiences as being a person of faith here?
Sorry, you said what surprised us up to this point about like work that has been done?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that learning that it's so basic, but like that gay people can be priests and can be ordained, and that trans people can be ordained, and that there are very few Black trans women who are ordained. And I've only recently learned that. I think that continuing to make space for these people to be able to serve and to share their voice, so that we're not just hearing it on days of celebration, like Ella was saying, but so that they are fully in, on regular daily parts of the community, and we're hearing their teachings and their guidance on a variety of topics in life has been great to see, and I think that needs to continue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for this community, because were it not for All Saints, I would potentially not be here, or potentially still be struggling in the closet and struggling with suicide. It wasn't until a sermon that I heard 3 years ago by Father Mike Kinman on the ways in which God includes what human societies exclude, specifically talking about queer King David and how David's gender expression and orientation and the ambiguity of both led to Jesse not even including him as one of his sons when he was called to bring forth all of the sons to see who would be anointed as the next king of Israel. And that sermon made me feel seen in a place where I wasn't out yet. And it gave me the courage and the conviction to come out to my family for the first time, which led me to where I am today, and the thriving that I'm able to experience and to speak and move and engage this world out of.
It all seems to me to be so steady and slow. I don't remember being surprised by any of it. All Saints was always at the forefront, and I expected that with the many movements to protest, to work for ordination of women, for gay clergy, for gay marriage. I figured right would prevail. And there are always surprises. One of Mike's first sermons, he was talking about the marginalized, and he used the word queer. I nearly fell out of my seat, because that was not a word that I could, that was like the worst thing you could say. And I turned to the choir member next to me and said, I prefer the word fairy, but okay. But I guess there were surprises along the way, but I expect them at All Saints. And yet I realize that it's been a place of learning for me too. We hear the statistics about transgender women being killed, and in the news about how they're treated in the armed services and all of those things. We have a lot of work to do still.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had an answer and then I forgot the question. I think one of the ways that I was actually doing a little bit of research for this question, and one of the ways that I was kind of surprised in a good way was that I saw some of the advancements that they had made, and I saw something from, I think, like around 2012 about documents having to have legal name and preferred name and pronouns. And I just, if I had thought about pronouns in a nuanced way in 2012, I think I would have, even such a small step like that, I would have had a much better understanding about my gender identity. And I think one of the things that surprised me was the way that sometimes in explorations of gender and transness, it can be a little bit disheartening, because it seems like where you can see queer people in a good amount of shows and stuff. It's like, it's very lucky to see a trans person, and even then, that's the focal point of the story. And so to see transness engaged in a really important way from a time where it was not something that was really even in my mind was surprising and kind of important for me. And I guess I agree, Terry, that I was thinking of ways that I've been surprised, and it's kind of hard to be surprised by All Saints because I think I'll find something out about my identity or about my beliefs, and then I'll realize that All Saints has already been doing that, and that's also been another important thing that I've felt supported in my growth as a person and as a queer person and as a trans person, and also as like a political person, like someone who's understanding the world. And there's always surprises that this realization is something that I can be understood in.
You okay?
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess as we start to wrap things up, looking forward to the future then, if you can imagine where the church might be in 5, 10, 20 years' time, what is your hope for the future? What would you like the sort of status of LGBTQ people of faith within the church to look like?
I would like for there to be more of us. It's often when I come to All Saints that I'm the only out trans person in the congregation. It's wonderful to see our non-binary youth priest, Kelly, up here. And it's wonderful to have Hannah directing our LGBTQ ministry. But it can often be a lonely experience. So I think just doing more community outreach and engaging people where they're at, and also just getting the message out that this is a place where you do belong and where you have much to contribute, because we very much need your voice.
My hope is that, well, as Terry mentioned, the faith community at large, of Christian tradition, is not very even. So there's a lot of people who are not very affirming and not very welcoming. And so my hope is just that there would be more people who could be understanding, affirming, and welcoming, and who could support and maybe someday co-conspire with us to do things.
I think my hope goes, I want to piggyback off what I think Gabriel said earlier about it being okay to doubt. That's definitely, I don't know, that wasn't something that was pushed, at least in the spiritual space, at least at church growing up. And coming to All Saints, that was something that has been encouraged since the first service I've been here. Asking questions and exploring what you're feeling. And I also remember Mike Kinman being in pulpit one of those first Sundays I was here, and literally saying, if you need to cry, this is a space. We want you to be able to cry. I want you to be able to feel this, this, this. If you feel those things, you should be able to express that. This is a home. And if you are at home, you should be able to do the things that make you feel your most self. And whatever you're feeling in that moment, you should be able to express and feel in a safe space in a home. And that going forward, it's not just at All Saints, but maybe that I can go to another Episcopal church and have that same feeling of sanctuary, of feeling my feelings and also asking questions and also sharing every bit of my identity.
I have a queer friend who is not a person of faith, and because of the amount that I've talked about being accepted here, whenever I talk about All Saints, she calls it gay church. And so, kind of to your point, Ella, I would also love to see a lot more people in the pulpits and in service, and kind of like you were saying, I would love to be able to have discussions like this about the intersections of gender and sexuality and race and class, because as someone who's half Latina, it's part of what I'm struggling with right now is how that affects my gender and my sexuality, and how it affects the way that I move throughout the world and learn about politics and stuff. And it's been really cool to be able to not only hope but know that in the future I will be supported by the people around me at All Saints.
Yeah. Terry, did you have a response to that, or?
Well, as your elder, I wrote a poem recently that sums up how I think about the future and the past.
Yes.
It's called Living the Journey. From this point, near the end, a shape is easier to make out than it ever was earlier, when there was no apparent design. Everything was random, disconnected then. In fact, back then, living was just that, taking one step at a time, one foot in front of the other, toward what? From this distance, though, is a sense that because of that, this happened. This turn led to that it wasn't haphazard travel. This road not taken, an opportunity lost, but something gained nevertheless. Some describe always having been striving for a long-held dream. Others say it was more like being pulled along unwittingly. Whichever way it was, a destination now seems imminent. So after looking back, the totality seems clearer. Life has meaning because it has been lived, survived, brought to a present conclusion, or nearly so.
Oh, thank you for that, Terry. Thank you. And I want to respond actually to this particular question of hope. And many of you here, members here, might remember that a couple of years ago, we did a parish-wide survey from the LGBTQ vision team that we had. And we simply asked, throughout the survey, we were just trying to gather data to ask those, what's missing? And what do we need more of? And what came out of that survey was that there was a need for more visibility and representation. So this morning, part of me is saying, we're doing that right now, and it can't be only today. It shouldn't only be in the month of June. And I think that what the struggle is how do now we embed the continued work for visibility and representation, maybe even outside of a forum. And yet, my hope, an optimistic view, is that we're there. It's happening now. And I think that, we have collectively gone through an experience in this past year, and it's not just pushed so many other social injustices are happening and the need to reckon with them, but this is also one of them as well. And, to have this morning, yes, I know it's on a Pride Sunday, and this is probably what typically people are expecting to happen. However, it's being done in a form of we're representing our truths in this moment. And what's beautiful about this panel is that you all come from different backgrounds, generational experience, and that you're still not there to fully being authentic. And that also is a truth. And I think that sometimes folks out in our community think like just owning your identity is like, great, that's your living your authentic self, and we know that that's not true. That it's always a work in progress, and sometimes it takes a lifetime to get there. But to have a space to tell that truth is special, and we can say even holy in here for that. So Darryl, Gabriel, Kaia, Terry, and Ella, thank you so much for being part of this forum. It's important that we did this, and we got to do more of it. That's just the truth in that as well. And to Hannah, do you have any last words you want to add to the group?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate thanks to you all for sharing your experiences and your wisdoms and your great ideas for what the church can continue to be doing and to improve in. And it's being able to hear these stories and hear these ideas and to absorb them and act on them, which is going to help us continue to take these steps forward. So, just thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And thank you to all of you who are watching with us online at the Rector's Forum. And this actually kind of concludes our forum this morning. Stay with us for the 11:15 Eucharist celebration, and we will see you there.